So you had a pretty rough week 2 weeks ago, and last week was a bit chill, and now you're back or what?
Last week I was back. Come on. I had one down week.
I think last week was a bit chill week for you, wasn't it?
No.
Oh, sorry, it's a one-on-one.
No, I got shit done. I mean, you saw the weeklies, but
Yeah.
there's a lot of stuff happening in between always. Like the show is still a lot of work to
Yeah.
make it amazing.
I know.
That's how it is. And then at some point you just like, you know
Maybe
what?
I'm just confusing last week with the week before.
Yeah, probably. But it's also at some point you're like, well, I've written, 60 of these emails now. The podcast has been in every single one. Kind of just want to maybe stop adding it now. Let's just assume we have it under control. Let's just assume. So this weekend, actually yesterday, as we were going to bed, I walked over to my side of the bed, ready to go to sleep. And I just looked at, my pillow and my duvet and the linen. I was like, why are there like black stripes and, glitter on my pillow and bed? It looks, don't get it the wrong way.
I know why.
Okay, go.
You dance too much with the trends.
No. But and then I looked at my wife. I was like, what's going on here? And it's like, oh yeah, but I painted our daughter like a zebra in the face, and then she took a nap in your side of the bed, so you could just see like this zebra mark on the pillow. So talking where that came from has kind of inspired me to then, create an amazing segue to where hypergrowth comes from.
Yeah,
that's what we're gonna figure out today.
I mean, zebra, unicorn. I mean, it's not that far from
No,
one another.
exactly. I mean, that could be our kind of label going forward. But anyway, so the thing is, we've all seen those hypergrowth companies where you just have this amazing, it's the hockey stick curve. Everybody wants that, the hockey stick curve. And I think a lot of people actually have the wrong idea of where it's coming from. So we're going to talk a bit about that today.
Let's do that. I think, and maybe this is kind of jumping the gun here a little bit. I think it's probably cut into two different ways, right? Hypergrowth in the beginning, probably very much, I would say, marketing and a sales execution thing in the very early beginning.
Yeah.
Right. And then, but Mikkel, what is it then later on? Tell me.
It's the customers. It's the customers, of course. And the reason is, quite simply put, so the reason is quite simple. You have a sales team, they can net add only so much MRR, ARR per year, right? And the way that scales is very linear. More sales folks, more revenue, if you dumb it down, right? So it's not, an exponential curve you get out of that, and it kind of resets every year, right? Runs throughout the year. Same from a marketing perspective. You can only do so much with the budget and people and channels and so on you have. But actually with the customers, that is not the case. If you plot this out on a line and you do some of the things we've talked about on this show, so price increases, if you can expand their usage, get more users, get more consumption of data, whatever it is, then you get an exponential curve. And that is actually what hypergrowth looks like.
No, absolutely. And we had Jaco talk about this. Was it?
Yeah,
no, it was in the overtime.
It was
I
in
think.
overtime, yeah.
So everyone go check out overtime. He had some nice charts, so you would actually need to watch it on YouTube. But really, the whole SaaS idea is that, to your point, the amount of new business you can bring in, it either scales linearly or it's kind of flat.
Yeah.
At some point, it's going to be flat, where most of your revenue and growth is going to come from is from your customer base.
Yeah.
Right. This is really where it is, and that whole trick is really why SaaS is such a very interesting category also to invest in, because the reason is, once you get to a point where you have so many customers and so much ARR and renewal business, you suddenly have an extremely profitable company potentially.
Yeah.
Right. You can potentially make this an extremely profitable company because you have 80% margins. You only need 20% of the revenue in order to service the revenue. That's the whole wonderful thing here. So all the other 80%, sure, you need to pay the CFO and a couple of other folks, but you could basically say, like, you know what, we're going to stop sales and marketing today.
Yeah.
And we're going to not add more product. We're just going to maintain stuff.
Yeah.
Then you suddenly have a massive amount of cash coming your way and you can, quote unquote, milk it.
Yeah.
And that's the idea why investors love it so much. So it's rarely being executed like this, to be honest. But what we do see a lot is that, as you climb up the ARR scale, suddenly, and maybe the growth is going a little bit down, and maybe the investors aren't as hot anymore about you, and you take your foot off the gas pedal on your sales and marketing, and you're kind of nicely like, sailing, floating into profitability.
Yeah. A gentle slide.
Yeah, it's like, and you're in there. And that's the power of it.
But I think the funny thing is also, like, when I think back to the conversations I've had around CS, it's always been, well, how do we decrease churn? And there's only so much upside from decreasing churn. But actually, I also think it's fundamentally the wrong way to look at it, like customer experience in the first place. It's about how much can we grow.
No, let's be honest. CS is the forgotten ugly child in the corner of GTM. It always is.
Yeah.
And it shouldn't be. And this is basically what this episode is about, right? It simply should not be the case. So we had Sam Jacobs on the show here, maybe aired, maybe not aired right now. I don't know. And we talked about the importance of a renewal.
Yeah.
Right. And I think you had another example that you could bring up in a second. But, the importance of a renewal, and hey, someone just renewed. That's the equivalent of someone just signed a new business deal.
Yeah.
But the way you go about it and the way you're happy and celebrate it, two completely different things. So why is that? I literally asked Sam, so why is it like this? And he just said, like, it's human conditioning. It's just wired into us that something new is always better.
Yeah.
And it feels like you impacted something by adding something on top instead of just having something that you had yesterday.
Yeah.
Right. It's I think this is where this is coming from, and it's also, okay, I renewed a customer. How much did I grow?
Yeah.
0. And there's just a lot of endorphins that simply don't fire. Compared to a new business rep.
But so I actually heard a conversation between another guest we had, Jaco van der Kooi, and a gentleman from Outreach. I forget his name right now. We'll add it to the show notes if I recall. But they said one of the
Mark Kozaglov or
yes,
something?
exactly, Kozaglov. And they talked about, well, one of the reasons this behavior you're describing with celebrating the deal is happening is because we come from a world called perpetual licenses, and that was the way you ran it because there were no renewals in there. And what Mark even noted was, it seems kind of odd. We renewed the biggest deal ever, a $12 million deal, no celebration. Literally, same day, closed a $12K deal, champagne all around. What is going on? Yeah. And it's just to put it bluntly, and we've talked about the whole, you run the whatever meeting with all the execs from every department, and CS gets the 2 minutes in the end, and yada. So I think we're going to make our old colleague, Jill, who works in customer experience, very proud.
I'm not sure she was listening.
No, I'm just going to send it to her.
No, but also when you think about revenue operations, I mean, CS Ops is literally the last thing to be added.
They get HR Ops before that.
Yeah, it's like, oh, we have the 5th person in sales ops. Should we do something for the CS team as well?
Yeah.
It's like, okay. But he is also going to run the deal desk.
Yeah. Oh, man.
So that's and that's the problem. That's I think what while it's funny, I think a lot of people probably kind of see themselves in this situation. Yeah, that's right. We're focusing a lot on sales and marketing.
So we're gonna focus on sales and marketing today because acquisition is very flat and linear. I mean, if you want hypergrowth from there, it's gonna also be hypergrowth on your budget, basically. Yeah. So that's not going to be the case for the customers. This is where the hypergrowth comes from. First off, when is it actually time for you to pay a bit more attention to this side? You kind of alluded to it in the beginning, like the stage we're at as a company, it makes no sense. Like we need to go out and get those and build that customer base, right? Yeah. So when is it time?
So I think really in terms of hypergrowth and kind of those are not exact numbers, but getting to 10 million, this will be largely a new business game between sales and marketing. I think if you have an extremely well-working marketing engine, then that can be a wave coming towards you and help you kind of accelerate. I think where you will start struggling if you don't have CS under control is in the jump from 10 to 20. That's basically kind of usually where some of that goes the wrong direction because math, because your ability to acquire new customers will start to be undermined by the now 10 million, 15 million customer base that you have, and then you have churn there.
Yeah.
So that will start like balancing each other out, and worst case scenario is that you're hitting at that point already kind of the wrong side of the S curve, kind of you're flattening out at that point. So many people that struggle from the 10 to 20 jump, they basically have a churn problem in many cases, right? However, where I think really the switch from a sales and marketing focus to a customer focus needs to happen is like in the post 50 million range, right? And then there's no end to it. Really, this is where even when you think about new business or additional business being brought on, it's if you have a good upsell motion, even your upsell will be more than your new business at this point, right?
True.
And this kind of flywheel, well, they're pushing kind of up there. I think this is really the tipping point between those two departments. And again, right? So it's not a rule of law in that specific case, right? It's kind of a little bit in between. But I think as you approach the 50 and beyond that, I think the focus on CS and the existing customer base will just increasingly so be more important.
So basically, we're saying that power dynamics should shift actually probably to a degree, right? That becomes more important to the business. Not that it's not important from like 25 to 50. Then it's still critical because you have a massive base up for renewal, right?
Yeah. So now the question almost becomes, okay, the power balance shifting, what does that actually mean? Yeah. And I think we prepared a couple of examples to go through to make clear what that actually means, and maybe also to emphasize the point of how things are in many minds, things are running today, and how that might not be the right thing for you, right? Yeah. So let's start off with a soft one here, sales enablement. Oh, it's a no-brainer. we need sales enablement. We have 10 reps. We need an enablement person. Someone needs to do those decks. Someone needs to listen to those calls.
Get coffee.
Someone needs to, Someone needs to, take the pricing deck and take it from dollars to, I don't know, krona or something. Yeah. Sure, we totally need that, but who's actually enabling CS?
Yeah.
Who is actually doing that, right? No one is thinking about it like this. It's like, you have sometimes the same amount of headcount. Yeah. At some point you will for sure. And the amount of time that's being, or the amount of money and effort being spent on enabling the CS team is always, if at all, an afterthought.
Yeah.
It's like, oh no, we need training for the reps and rep productivity and spiffs and commissions and all that stuff. But the CS people know they just need to do some onboarding calls. So I think this is kind of the and really those kind of juxtapositions are really about like, hey, wait a minute, the way you're thinking about your sales and marketing, you need to start thinking the same way about CS, and increasingly so between the 20 to 50 million mark. Let's just say it like this, right?
I think it's also pretty key when you think about it, because you will have a CSM working on a portfolio that actually pay you money versus a sales rep that are trying to get, dollars in. So there's a big difference when you look at it that way.
Yes.
And I think just imagine someone not getting any training in handling a very delicate conversation with an unhappy customer. What's going to happen is a scenario where the VPs or whatever get pulled in all the time, or even the CEO, CRO, to salvage the relationship, versus are they equipped to actually do discovery and find expansion opportunities, right?
Yes. So exactly, right? And kind of if we're moving on to kind of the next item, it's almost, and I think this is something that comes out of the way you grow a business.
Yeah.
Think about where you truly have the best, the most expensive, and the most senior folks centered in your GTM, and the answer will be, in many cases, in your sales and marketing. Yeah. Even, let's just say you're a CEO, you're CRO, what are you truly thinking about all the time? Is it CS or is it new business? And at some point, and we're kind of saying between this 20 to 50 million mark, at some point what you will need to do, you will need to start shifting this perspective from a all the brains, all the minds, all the money on sales and marketing to, hey, wait a minute, maybe we need the best and brightest on CS instead, right? And think about it like this. It's really in the beginning, you focus on product market fit. That's, your full focus is on this. The next thing is go to market fit.
Yeah.
Then you hit 10 million and you realize, oh, wait a minute, we've been running kind of a haphazard shit show here. Getting here was really fantastic, but now we need to go from unorganized to factory line setup, right? And kind of then you do this shift.
Yeah.
And this shift from new biz to existing biz or CS, that shift just needs to happen as well. And I think it's just not being talked about all that much.
Do you think you need to start? So there's also a timing component. You don't start at 50 million and go, okay, folks, now we're going to prioritize it. We're going to let go of the slackers and get someone who is really awesome. At some point around maybe 25 million, you actually start to build the organization that's going to be there for 50, right? How do you see that?
Yeah, I think, so I don't think that, you have slackers in there before.
No,
by the way.
No,
especially if Jill is going to
yeah,
listen.
no, I was talking,
no, it's I think as you go into your annual retreat with your leadership team, one topic that comes up a lot is thinking about org structure and leadership and so forth. Whom do you place? Where do you need some reinforcements? And I think around this 15 to 25 million mark, you need to think really hard. Okay, should we be up leveling our CS leadership here? Should we be doing that?
Yeah.
Because those are thoughts that you have all the time, right? The VP of sales is he sucks. Let's and out and next one in and now we're at 10 million. I think sorry, you can't. We need the 10 to 50 million guy now, right?
Yeah.
You have those conversations way more proactively. Same with marketing, same with the CMO and so forth. And really for CS, I think that conversation simply also needs to happen. I think getting to 15, 20 million, this is already fantastic. Don't get me wrong, especially as a CS leader. But you really also, for that slot, you want to have a been there, done that person as well.
Yeah.
And I think that conversation needs to, with the VP of sales, it happens in 1 million, 10 million, 50 million, 100 million. For the VP CS, I would say around 15 to 25 million. Think about, whom you have in that slot, and is that person able and capable of getting you to the 50 and the 100.
Yeah.
Yes. Next thing, think about your go-to-market process and your funnel. Think about that for a second.
Yeah.
Visualize it in front of you, what you're focusing on, how many steps you have, how many different frameworks you have to just talk about the funnel. And you will have, there's something on ads, there's something on traffic on the website, there's something on, leads and how they progress from lead to MQL to whatever. Then you have opportunity stages, forecasting, everything. And then for CS, you have renewed or churned.
Yeah. Maybe you have NPS.
I mean, it's just, and we see this a lot, right?
Yeah.
Because we set those engines up, and tons of focus, tens of steps.
Yeah.
For the new biz side, and conversion rate here went down in the US, and what's happening here?
Yeah.
And then on the renewal side, it's it's upsold or or churn.
Did you get the job done or not?
And it's not because of lack of capability that we have on the product side. So I think there's some things that we can't do, but what we're seeing a lot is that people put very little attention onto that side of the bow tie.
Yeah.
And that just comes out as the different things that they're tracking and so forth. This when you visualize the bow tie, it's like by winning by design. It's like on purpose. It's like those two are the same cones.
Yeah,
which is super weird. By the way, it's super weird. But it's the same cones, and I get the concept and everything. But as they're fully balancing out, shouldn't you be deploying the same level of scrutiny and detailedness that you have on the new business side to the existing business side?
Yeah.
And if you don't have that, you should be wondering why that actually is. Right.
Yeah.
And all the diagnostic capabilities that you have for your new biz funnel, you basically don't have any of these for the other side. So how are you going to get better? right?
Yeah.
How is that actually going to work out? And I think this is another way of you know, of us trying to have everyone realize that, wait a minute, you're right. It's there. Everyone says it's important. NRR is super important and everything. But the way we operate the business around it, we don't actually fully take it seriously.
No, it tells us otherwise, at least.
Yeah. Then think about the kind of software that you're buying. Think about all the stuff that you're buying for just salespeople alone, marketing folks. I mean, it's insane.
It's obscene.
I think what I learned is marketing tools sometimes seem to be cheaper, while they are just more, like a lot more.
Yeah.
And then on the sales side, you have fewer, but they're way more expensive, actually. The amount of money just spent on tooling for sales and marketing is insane.
Yeah.
And then you have, and this is a shout out to, you know, Nick Mehta and everything, and then you have, should you be getting Gainside? Or I think the spreadsheet should work out a little bit longer.
Yeah.
Come on, the spreadsheet can work, right?
Or Salesforce, you can have one license for Salesforce.
And this, again, it shows a little bit how stingy you are on that side of the funnel, and, you know, how much you're not willing to invest and build it out and make this the best possible organization you can have in order to, you know, unlock this hypergrowth, right?
But I think it's also common because you're coming from a point in time where you spend, you know, the budget line that says customer experience is incredibly small, and you actively need to grow that, which is just, you know, perceived as a cost to prevent some churn, versus looking at it as a growth thing, right? So I think it is a mindset shift. I also wonder, like, there's the other thing, and maybe we should actually get into it now, which is you need to have you mentioned the gross margin, right? That might also hold back some decision if you need to maintain.
Yeah. So this is I think one of the issues here. Investors want to see an 80-85% gross margin.
Yeah.
Meaning you make $100 in revenue from your customers, and $85 of those are not necessary, are not needed in order to service the customer.
Yeah.
That's the idea, right? So on the stuff that you need to put in for servicing are the servers. So then it's always, you know, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So basically data, the infrastructure, the stuff the product is running on. And then number two, you obviously need the CS team, the people, right? And your support folks, by the way, it's both of them basically need to go in there. And when you go below the 80%, like 75 and stuff like that, investors are starting to be like, you know, I think you need to be getting this up again, which is perpetuating the stinginess on this side, right? So what a couple of folks have been doing, which, you know, you can agree and disagree on. I'm not quite sure where you're going to take this, but they got very creative in where to put those costs.
Yeah.
Some put them into CAC, so customer acquisition costs, obviously. And there's a balance there because it's like, you know, do I want to make this look worse, and can I afford this? And then a surprising amount of folks, and I saw this in either Ben Murray or Ray Reich, 20 or 25% of companies put them into G&A, so general and admin.
Oh yeah.
So
it's just some admin work, you know.
So the thing is, you can't put it in R&D. That's for sure. Well, but you can put it into either cost of goods sold, obviously. You can put some of that into sales or marketing, obviously. And then, you know, R&D is off the table. So it's really G&A, so general admin. That's the only one left. And a couple of people are doing it. And, you know, why are they doing this? Well, number one, it takes pressure off the gross margin. They still look fantastic. And number two, you don't put it into your sales and marketing expenses, which would make you seem less efficient. It still is the same EBITDA, so earnings before interest and tax. It's the same EBITDA as before. The OPEX is the same. But it basically kind of sits somewhere where there's not so much scrutiny on the metric side, right? And I think the reason why this is not a bad idea is because you actually want to invest more into the CS team without immediately getting penalized by your investors and saying like, you know, you need to kind of get this up again, right? So I think this is one of the reasons why people struggle to add more focus onto the CS team, because
Yeah.
more focus will come with more expensive headcount, will come with more tools and so forth. I think one last one on the list that we kind of didn't mention yet, which I think is really, really interesting, is pricing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Who, think about it, who decides pricing in the organization? And I can tell you, most of the cases, it will be, I don't know, sales enablement, or revenue operations sometimes does that, or the COO, someone runs a project.
Yeah.
But who really decides it?
Yeah.
I mean, it's going to be a sales and marketing organization. And depending on how deep in the B2B space you are, it's going to be sales.
Yeah.
Sales is going to decide what the pricing is going to be. And sure, they won't set, the logic and the methodology and, all of that stuff. But if you say the wrong number to your VP of sales and, what the starting price is, you will get a very clear reaction on what the number should be, right? And I think as you approach the 50 million, that maybe should change.
Yeah.
Maybe it should be the VP of CS that should be, having that cringy emotion, and should be setting the pace for where pricing should go. Why? Well, it's a lot more money you can get by setting, different pricing, improved pricing from your perspective, obviously, onto the customer base. And who's going to be affected the most? Well, the customers will be affected the most, right? And what I've seen a lot is folks tend to go the easy route and basically just doing percentage-based price increases, which is easy to argue for the newbie side.
Yeah.
Easy conversation. Well, price was this yesterday, it's this one today.
Yeah.
I can give you a discount.
Yeah.
And then the increase is just being rolled into the customer base, right?
Yeah.
And I think what should happen is actually, okay, first of all, we're not going to only go with, silly reverse discounts, because that's really what this is.
Yeah.
We're rather going to go into an actual pricing and packaging, kind of what are the features that we're seeing people are using, what are the features people are using that don't churn and upsell instead, and where can we build those different drop-off points between those two parts, and so forth. All of that stuff, actually, that needs to be way more considered than the other side of which is competitive, right? It's like, hey, if we go in with this number, we're not going to win any deals because the other guys are just cheaper and blah, right? And I think as you approach this 50 million mark, I think pricing led by CS will be increasingly so the better route to go than Ubis.
I think it's also going to be easier, right, for a VP of CX or whatever to go back to the team and said, this is what we agreed, right? Because I was part of making that decision very clearly and had these objections and used the feedback from the team. And then if you have proper sales enablement, then actually going and communicating those price changes, all of a sudden you can see how this changes the approach. And don't get me wrong, it can be a painful process to up the prices on existing customers, but it is growth still.
Yes. And then maybe we end on your favorite one.
My favorite one? So the marketing one. Oh yeah, for sure. No, I keep seeing this with a lot of folks that I talk with, at least in marketing. All the focus is, let's get some more revenue. And specifically, let's get it through sales. There's almost no focus on customer experience, right? You have all these, you mentioned all the tools we have available in marketing, all the channels. The majority of those are being wielded to acquire new leads and new business, right? And what do we do for CX? Well, maybe we do an automated onboarding flow and we spend 10 minutes thinking about it and setting it up. But
it's going to be a Google form.
Yeah. But getting a customer marketing headcount that works actively with CS to build what they need towards the customers, whether it's training, strategy, you name it, just no. Doesn't exist. Doing a help center overhaul, marketing is going to look at you and go like, okay, so we're going to spend 3 months designing a help center and helping with article. Are you kidding me?
I think companies do a Super Bowl first.
Yeah. No, but I think it's also like marketing also gets the adrenaline from seeing their deals close, right?
Yeah.
you don't get it. Again, I think it's a systemic disease in SaaS. You don't get it from a renewal. It's not like even a CSM is going to say, hey, you know what? That help center you helped update, help renew this customer. High five. It doesn't happen. So I think it's back to for me, the mindset switch you in the organization need to actually create, which is not just the job of customer experience. I think it is so much the job of both sales, marketing, and even RevOps and the CRO to kind of change that and say, hey, actually, this is, we can see this is becoming more and more important in the coming years. So this is where we need to start focusing a bit more.
Absolutely. So wrapping up, the getting to 20 million and so forth, very much new biz driven, marketing driven, getting there. That's kind of the difficult piece. As you go from 20 to 50 and beyond, really the focus needs to shift more and more towards your customer base.
Yeah.
It simply has to, and it will come in the form of investing in CS much more, getting better, more experienced people in there, giving them better tools, enabling them a better way, potentially even saying, hey, marketing expenses should be starting to focus on that side of the bow tie. If you don't do that, it will be extremely difficult for you to pull off hypergrowth. And that was the episode today.
That's it. Let's go get some more customers, and then we can worry about customer experience later.
Customer experience, who cares? Thank you, Mikkel.
Yeah, thanks, Tony. I hope Jill enjoyed this episode, and also the rest of the listeners.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.